Chapter 1. The Silent Town. Noah Vale was a young man who wanted to write a book. He had many ideas but never finished any of them. Every time he started, something stopped him in the middle. He wanted to go far from people, noise, and busy life. So he moved to a quiet town called Riverton. It was a small place where nobody knew him. He thought, maybe here I can finally write my story. He found a small house to stay in. The rent was low, and the owner was kind. The house had simple walls, one table, and a small bed. It was not new, but it was peaceful. Noah wanted only silence and time to write. Every morning he made tea, sat near the window, and wrote a few lines. Sometimes he talked to himself softly. This time I will finish it. But by evening, his pages stayed almost empty. He felt lost again. One night when he was reading, the lights flickered for a moment. He looked up. The air felt heavy. He stood up and checked the door. It was closed. He smiled and said, "Maybe I am just tired." But the sound of small footsteps seemed to come from the other room. He walked slowly, his heart beating fast. The room was empty. Only the clock ticked softly. Noah said quietly, "I think I need some fresh air." The next morning, he went to the small library near the main street. The librarian, an older woman with kind eyes, welcomed him. "We don't get many writers here," she said with a smile. Noah laughed. "I'm not a real writer yet. I'm just trying," she said. "Then this is a good place to try." Her voice was gentle. Noah looked around. The shelves were full of books but covered with dust. He liked that. Old stories had secrets in them. He spent hours looking through the shelves until he found a wooden box on a corner table. Inside the box were some old letters and a small brown diary. The diary had no title, but it looked safe, as if someone had taken care of it for years. He opened the first page. A name was written there, Mira Solon. The writing was neat and soft. He whispered, "Mira Solon. What a beautiful name." He started reading. Mira wrote about small things, her thoughts, her drawings, and her dreams. She wrote about helping people and smiling even on sad days. Noah felt something strange. Her words were simple, yet they touched his heart. It was like she was speaking to him. The librarian came near and said, "We are closing now." Noah asked, "Can I borrow this?" She nodded. "No one ever asked for it. Take it." That night, Noah sat on his bed with the diary. The rain fell lightly outside. He read one page after another. Mira's words were full of kindness and hope. She talked about courage, patience, and love that asks for nothing. He smiled and said softly, "You write like someone who believed in goodness." For a moment, he thought he heard a light whisper, almost like a breath saying, "Thank you." Noah stopped reading. His eyes moved around the quiet room. Everything was still, yet his heart beat fast. "Maybe I'm just too tired," he said, and laughed softly. But deep inside, he knew something was different about that diary. He kept it on the table, turned off the lamp, and lay down. He closed his eyes but could not sleep. Mira's words played again and again in his mind. Before he finally fell asleep, he whispered, "Tomorrow I'll read more, Mira. I want to know who you were. The wind moved gently outside the window, as if answering him. In that silent town, one lonely writer had found the first voice of his new story. And maybe a lost heart waiting to be heard. Chapter 2. The Lost Pages. Next morning, Noah woke up early. The sun was soft and the air felt quiet. He made tea and looked at the small brown diary on his table. He smiled and said softly, "Good morning, Mira." He did not know why he said it, but it felt natural. He opened the diary again. The pages smelled old, but the words were alive. Mira wrote about her life in simple lines. She said she loved painting. She used to draw faces of people she met. She also helped children learn small songs and stories. Noah smiled as he read. Her words were full of hope. She wrote, "One kind word can make a sad day bright." Noah whispered, "You were a good person, Mira." As he turned more pages, he found one torn from the middle. Only half of the writing was left. It said, "I saw Kalen today. He said he will come back soon." The rest of the sentence was missing. Noah stopped reading for a moment. Who is Callan? He thought. Maybe a friend? Or maybe someone she loved. He looked at the torn edge again. It looked as if someone had pulled the page in hurry. He read the next few pages carefully. Mira had written about the same name again. She said, "Kalen makes me laugh. He says I see the world in colors." Noah could almost imagine her smiling while writing that line, but after some pages, the tone changed. The writing became slower, the letters uneven. She wrote, "He has to go. I will wait for him. I know he will return." Noah sat back. His eyes were fixed on those words. "Did he ever come back?" he whispered. He felt a small ache in his heart for a girl he had never met. He turned the page again, but it was blank. Then another page was missing. Then suddenly, writing started again. But now it was different. The words looked rushed. The lines were short. She wrote, "The sea is loud tonight. I think it will rain, but I still wait." Noah kept reading till his eyes felt heavy. It was strange. Each page made him feel close to her, yet also sad. He said softly, "Mira, what happened to you?" The diary did not answer. Only a few pages were left now. He held it like a fragile thing. That afternoon, he went back to the library. The librarian smiled. "You liked the diary?" Noah said, "Yes, very much. Do you know who Mira Solon was?" The woman shook her head. "I've heard that name before, maybe from my mother. She said a girl lived here long ago, a kind one. But she was gone before I was born." Noah asked, "Gone? You mean she moved?" The woman said slowly, "Maybe. Nobody knows. She just disappeared." On his way home, Noah could not stop thinking. He whispered, "Mira, did you really disappear? Or did someone forget you?" His heart felt heavy, but there was also curiosity. That night, he placed the diary beside his bed again. He opened one of the blank pages and stared at it for a long time. Then he said, "If your story is lost, I will find it." When he turned off the light, he thought he heard a small sound near the window. It was like a gentle sigh. He smiled and said softly, "Good night, Mira." Then he closed his eyes. He did not know that his promise had already reached a heart that was waiting for years. A heart that wanted to be heard once more. Chapter 3. The Old Portrait. The next day, Noah went to the library again. He wanted to ask more about Mira. The librarian said, "You can try the old shop near the corner. The owner knows many old stories about this town." Noah thanked her and walked there. Inside the shop, an old lady was sitting behind the counter. She looked up and smiled. "You must be the writer," she said. Noah nodded. "Yes, I'm new here. I'm writing about someone who lived long ago. Her name was Mira Solon." The lady's smile slowly faded. "Mira," she repeated softly. "That name takes me back." She looked at the small window for a moment and then said, "She was a lovely girl. I was very young then. People liked her. She painted pictures and helped the children in our street. Everyone knew her by her smile." Noah asked, "What happened to her?" The woman sighed. "One night there was a big storm. After that, no one saw her again." Noah listened carefully. He felt both sad and curious. "Did she have any family here?" he asked. The woman said, "No. She lived alone, but she was never lonely. People came to her house for small talks or to buy her paintings. Her home was near the sea road. It's empty now, but still standing." Noah thanked her and said, "Maybe I'll see it once." The lady nodded and said, "If you go there, say hello to her for me." Noah smiled. "I will." In the evening, Noah went to that side of the town. The house was small, simple, and quiet. The door was open. He stepped inside slowly. There were some old things covered in dust, and on one corner, there was a big painting covered with cloth. Noah walked near it and lifted the cover. It was a portrait, a painting of a young woman with kind eyes and a soft smile. He whispered, "Mira." It felt like she was looking at him. At the bottom of the painting, there was a line written in small letters. "For the day I return." He touched the frame gently. His fingers trembled. "Did you ever come back, Mira?" he said in a low voice. A soft wind passed by, and the paper from the table moved a little. Noah turned around quickly, but saw nothing. He smiled nervously and said, "Maybe it's just air." He stayed there for a few more minutes, then left the house quietly. But when he reached the street, he looked back once more. The light from the setting sun fell exactly on the portrait window. It looked like Mira's face was glowing. That night, Noah could not sleep. He sat near the window and looked at the diary again. "You left something behind," he whispered. "A story, a promise." He thought about her last lines. "The sea is loud tonight. I still wait." Maybe she was still waiting. The thought made him feel heavy inside. He opened his notebook and started writing down what he had learned. He wrote about the shop lady, about the storm, and about the house near the sea. But when he tried to describe the portrait, he stopped. He looked at the blank page and said softly, "Some faces can't be described by words." Before sleeping, He closed his eyes and said, "If you can hear me, Mira, I will find out what happened. You deserve to be remembered." The wind moved softly again. He felt peace for a second, like someone had heard him. He smiled and whispered, "Good night, Mira." He did not know that the story had only just begun, and that every step he took was leading him closer to the truth hidden in those lost pages. Chapter 4. The Message in the Diary. The next morning, Noah sat with the diary again. He turned the pages slowly, afraid they might tear. The pages after the storm story looked older, almost fading. The ink was light, but he could still read her words. Mira wrote, "It has been 2 weeks. I wait every day. Kalen promised to come back. I still believe he will." Noah sighed. "She kept waiting," he whispered. Her writing was gentle, but full of pain. On the next page, Mira said, "People tell me to stop hoping. They say life must go on. But how do you move on when your heart still stands in the same place?" Noah felt a small ache inside. He could almost see her sitting alone, writing those lines with tears in her eyes. He closed the diary for a moment and stared at the wall. "You must have loved him deeply," he said softly. Then he smiled sadly. "Maybe too deeply." He opened the diary again. There was another note, shorter this time. "If I ever disappear, tell him I never gave up." Noah read that line twice. "Disappear?" he said slowly. "What did you mean, Mira?" That afternoon, he went back to the library. The librarian was arranging some books. Noah asked, "Do you know anyone named Kalen Ward?" The woman looked surprised. "I heard that name once, long ago. He was an artist, I think. He used to paint near the sea. My grandmother once said he left suddenly and never returned." Noah's eyes widened. "He never came back?" The librarian shook her head. "No one knows what happened. Maybe he left the town forever." Noah walked back home with the diary in his hand. His thoughts were restless. "She waited for him," he whispered. "But he never came." That night, he opened the diary again. Near the end, there was one page half written. The handwriting looked weaker, as if her hands were tired. She wrote, "Tonight the sea sounds louder. It calls my name. Maybe it knows where he is." Noah read that line again and again. "The sea calls my name," he repeated. He felt a strange feeling in his chest, sadness mixed with fear. He wondered if she had gone near the sea that night. He turned to the last page. It was almost empty. Only 3 words were written there. "I still wait." He closed the diary and leaned back. His eyes stayed on those words. For a long time, he did not move. He felt like the room had become colder. Then he heard something, a light sound near the door. He turned quickly, but there was no one there. He said softly, "Mira?" But only silence answered. He smiled sadly and said, "Maybe your story never ended. Maybe it was left for me to finish." He took his notebook and started writing again. This time his words came faster. He wrote about love that never gives up, about faith that lives even when hope dies. Hours passed, and he didn't stop. When he finally looked at the clock, it was midnight. He closed his notebook and took a deep breath. "If you are still here," he said, "I will not let your story disappear." The wind outside made a soft sound, almost like a sigh. He looked at the window, but it was closed. He placed the diary near his bed and turned off the light. His heart was heavy, but there was also calmness. He whispered, "I will find the rest, Mira. I promise." Then he closed his eyes. In that quiet room, the diary moved slightly, as if touched by unseen fingers. A page turned on its own and stopped at the words, "If I ever disappear, tell him I never gave up." The candlelight flickered once and then went still, as if someone had finally heard her message after all these years. Chapter 5. The Man Who Remembered. Next morning, Noah woke up with the diary still beside his pillow. He touched it gently and said, "Good morning, Mira. I'm still here." Then he laughed softly at himself. He felt strange, but not afraid. It was like she had become a part of his thoughts now. He wanted to know more about her and about the man she waited for. At the library, he met the librarian again. She said, "You look tired, Noah. You read too much, maybe." He smiled. "No, I'm fine. I just can't stop thinking about that diary. I feel like she's waiting for someone to tell her story." The librarian looked thoughtful. "You can try talking to old Peter Lorne," she said. "He knows about everyone who lived here long ago." Noah asked, "Where can I find him?" She said, "He stays near the old park. He's kind but forgetful. Tell him I sent you." Noah went there in the afternoon. Peter was sitting outside his small house, holding a cup of tea. He was old, but his eyes were bright. Noah smiled and said, "Hello, sir. My name is Noah. I'm writing a book about a girl who lived here. Her name was Mira Solon." Peter looked up slowly and said, "Mira? Oh, yes, I remember that name." Noah sat near him. "You knew her?" he asked. Peter nodded. "I was young when she was here. Everyone liked her. She used to paint near the beach and laugh with the children. She had a light in her eyes, the kind you don't forget." He took a deep breath. "She was close to a man named Kalen Ward. He painted too. They were happy for some time. But Kalen left one day. He said he had work in another city. Mira waited for him, even when people told her he wouldn't return." Noah listened carefully. He said softly, "Did she ever meet him again?" Peter shook his head. "No one saw Kalen again. Then one night, a big storm hit the town. The sea was wild. People said Mira went near the water that evening. After that, she was gone." Noah's heart sank. "So, no one found her?" Peter's voice grew softer. "No. Only her small bag was found near the rocks. Some said she was lost to the sea, but others said her spirit stayed here. They said she couldn't leave without saying goodbye." Noah felt a chill inside, but he smiled to hide it. "Maybe she's still waiting for her story to be told," he said quietly. Peter looked at him and smiled faintly. "Maybe you are the one to do it," he said. "Maybe that's why you came to Riverton." His words made Noah silent for a moment. He didn't know what to say. He stood up and thanked Peter for his time. As he walked away, the old man called out, "If you ever go near her old house again, say her name with respect. She had a pure heart." Noah nodded and said, "I will." On his way home, he thought about everything Peter had said. "So, she really disappeared after the storm," he whispered. "And no one ever knew the truth." That night, he opened the diary again. The same words looked different now. Every line felt alive. He imagined her sitting there, writing while the wind blew outside. He closed his eyes and said softly, "Mira, I know you waited, but now I'll wait for you, till I find what really happened." He smiled faintly and placed the diary near his heart. For the first time in a long while, he felt peace, as if someone unseen had placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Before he slept, he whispered one last time, "Good night, Mira." Somewhere far away, a soft voice seemed to answer, "Good night, Noah." Chapter 6. The Voice at Night. Noah could not sleep that night. He kept thinking about the old man's words. Peter had said that Mira might still be waiting, that her spirit never left Riverton. Those words stayed inside Noah's head like an echo. He looked at the diary on his table. Its cover looked old but calm, like it was hiding a secret. He said softly, "Mira, I believe you're still here." He smiled faintly, then opened the diary again. The first few pages were already read, but he turned them slowly as if they could speak. The last lines repeated in his mind, "I still wait." He whispered, "You waited for Kaylin. Now I wait for your truth." He wrote those words on his notebook. "If I can tell your story, maybe you can finally rest." His heart felt heavy, yet peaceful at the same time. He did not know why, but he felt close to her, like he knew her beyond words. As the night grew quiet, he heard something, a soft sound. It was not from outside. It came from inside the room. He sat up and listened. Someone was whispering. The voice was calm and light, almost like a breath. It said, "Finish my story." Noah froze. His hands shook a little. "Who's there?" he asked. There was silence again. He took a deep breath and said, "If that was you, Mira, I'm not afraid. I'm here to help." The room stayed quiet, but when he looked at the diary, one page had turned by itself, the same page where she had written about the sea calling her name. Noah touched the page softly and said, "You want me to finish it, right?" He opened his notebook and started writing. He wrote about a girl full of life, who smiled even when life turned dark. He wrote about her hope, her kindness, her endless waiting. His words came easily, as if someone was guiding him. He did not stop for hours. When he finally looked up, his eyes were wet. He said softly, "I wrote what I felt from your words, Mira. I hope it's right." For a moment, the air felt lighter. Then he heard a small sound near the window again. This time it was not frightening. It was gentle, almost thankful. Noah stood up and said, "If you're really here, Just know that you're not forgotten anymore. His voice broke a little. You were brave, and you loved truly. That's what people should remember. He smiled faintly and added, Your story will not die with time. Then he laughed softly, trying to calm his heart. You know, Mira, you make me feel like I'm not alone anymore. He walked to his bed and sat down. The wind outside blew softly, and for a second he felt warmth on his shoulder. It was soft, almost like a hand. He closed his eyes. Thank you, he whispered. I think I understand now. He didn't know what exactly he understood, but deep inside, he felt peace. When morning came, Noah opened the diary again. He saw something new. On the last blank page, there were faint words written now, words that were not there before. They said, Thank you for listening. His eyes widened. He touched the page, but the ink did not move. It was real. He smiled and whispered, You're welcome, Mira. He closed the diary and looked out of the window. The sunlight entered the room, soft and golden. He took a deep breath and said, Your story is almost complete. Just one more step. He picked up his notebook and wrote the title of his new book, The Girl from Riverton. That night, before sleeping, he placed the diary on the table beside him. You'll always have your place here, he said softly. He closed his eyes, but sleep did not come easily. In the half-sleep, he heard her voice again, soft, calm, and kind. Thank you, Noah. He smiled in his sleep and whispered back, Rest now, Mira. Outside, the wind moved slowly through the quiet town. Somewhere in that silence, an old story was finally being written again, not by the girl who lived it, but by the man who heard her voice and promised never to forget. Chapter 7. The book named Mira. Days passed slowly after that night. Noah kept thinking about the faint words he had seen on the diary page. Thank you for listening. Every morning he looked at the diary before writing, as if it was watching over him. He felt calm now. The strange fear was gone. It was replaced by something softer. Peace. Maybe friendship. He had never met Mira, but he felt like he knew her deeply. He started working on his book seriously. He named it The Girl from Riverton. At first, he wanted to make it a simple story, but as he wrote, he realized it was not only her story, it was also his. Every page he wrote carried some of his heart. He wrote about hope, kindness, and waiting. He wrote about love that stayed even when time ended. He said to himself, This will not just be a book. It will be a voice. One day the librarian asked him, Noah, you come here every day now. You seem different. Did you finally find your story? He smiled. Yes, he said softly. But it found me first. She looked curious but didn't ask more. He thanked her again for letting him borrow the diary. She said, You can keep it. Maybe it belongs to you now. He looked at her, surprised. Are you sure? She nodded. Some stories choose their writers. I think this one chose you. That night, Noah sat at his desk and opened both his notebook and the diary. He said quietly, Mira, I'm going to finish this today. I'll tell the world what you couldn't say." He began to type slowly, choosing every word with care. He described her as she had shown herself through her diary, a kind, honest girl who loved painting and who never gave up. He wrote about Callan, too, but not with anger. He wrote about forgiveness, because Mira never blamed anyone. Hours turned into days. Noah forgot to check the time. When he was tired, he would whisper, "Don't worry, Mira. I'll finish soon." And somehow, he always felt new energy to write again. He wrote about the storm, about her last walk near the Fao, Isia, and about her words, "I still wait." He didn't make it a sad ending. Instead, he wrote that some love stories never die. They only change form. They become memories, voices, or quiet winds that touch our lives again. Finally, after many weeks, Noah typed the last line. His hand stopped on the keyboard. He read the final words out loud. And so, Mira found her peace, not in silence, but in the heart that heard her. He leaned back in his chair. His eyes were wet, but his lips smiled. He whispered, "It's done." The room was quiet. Then, as if answering him, the window curtain moved a little, even though there was no wind. The diary on his table flipped open by itself and stopped at the page where it said, "I still wait." Noah looked at it, his heart full. He said softly, "You don't have to wait anymore, Mira. Your story is alive now." For a moment, he thought he saw a soft light near the window, faint, warm, and peaceful. It lasted only a few seconds, but he knew what it was. He didn't move. He only whispered, "Goodbye, Mira." The light slowly faded, but the peace in his heart stayed. The next week, Noah gave his finished book to a small publisher in town. The man read it and said, "This is beautiful, Noah. It feels real, like it's written with a soul." Noah smiled and replied, "Maybe it is." A few months later, the book was printed. On the first page, Noah wrote a small note. For Mira, whose voice still whispers in every word, when the book was released, many readers wrote to him. They said the story touched their hearts. Some said they cried, some said they smiled. But all of them said the same thing. It felt real. Noah read every message and said softly, "She finally reached them." That night, Noah went to the sea for the first time since he came to Riverton. He carried the diary with him. The sky was clear. He stood near the water and said, "Your story is out there now, Mira. People know you. You'll never be forgotten again." Then he opened the diary and let the wind move its pages. One page turned and stopped, showing the words, "Thank you for listening." Noah smiled, closed the diary, and whispered, "Rest now, Mira. The world knows your heart." He stood there quietly for a while. The waves touched his feet softly, like a gentle goodbye. He walked back slowly, holding the diary close to his chest. He didn't feel lonely anymore. For the first time, he understood that some connections don't need faces or voices, only truth and kindness. He looked at the sky one last time and said, Good night, Mira. And maybe, from somewhere far above, a soft voice answered, Good night, Noah. Chapter 8. The Smile in the Sky. The book. The Girl from Riverton changed Noah's life. It was not a big bestseller, but people who read it felt something inside their hearts. They wrote letters and said, Your story healed me. Some said, It felt real, like she truly existed. Noah smiled every time he read such words. He always whispered, Yes, she did exist. Not in body, but in spirit. Months passed. Noah became known as the writer of hope. But deep inside, he knew the truth. The real author was Mira. He often said softly, I just wrote what she told me. The diary still stayed on his table, its pages calm, as if resting now. Sometimes he touched it and said, You're at peace, aren't you? And though the room was silent, he always felt a quiet yes in his heart. One afternoon, Noah got a letter from the publisher. They wanted him to speak about his book at a small event in town. He agreed. When the day came, many people gathered. He stood on the stage with his book in his hand. He said, This story is about faith. It's about waiting and never giving up. His voice was calm and full of feeling. It's not just a love story. It's about believing that goodness never dies. After the event, a young girl came to him. She said, Your book made me believe again. I was sad before, but now I feel hope. Noah smiled and replied, That's what she wanted, for people to believe again. The girl looked confused. She? He smiled. Someone who waited a long time for her story to be heard. That night, Noah walked to the same sea where Mira's story had begun. He sat near the water, holding the diary close to him. The sky above was full of stars. He said softly, It's strange, Mira. I came here as a man with no story, and now I leave as someone who found meaning through yours. He smiled gently. You taught me that some love doesn't end. It just changes shape. He opened the diary one last time. The pages were still blank after the last line. Thank you for listening. He touched the words softly. You were right, he whispered. Every soul just wants to be heard. He looked at the sea and said, I hope you're happy now, wherever you are. A cool wind touched his face, light and soft. He closed the diary and placed it on the sand. Then he looked at the sky. The clouds moved slowly, and for a second, he saw something. A shape, like a gentle smile forming among the stars. It was faint but real. His eyes filled with tears. He said, Good night, Mira. He sat there quietly for a long time. He didn't want to leave, but he knew she was free now. The sea looked calm, the waves quiet. He felt a peace that words could not explain. After a while, he stood up and whispered, Your story will live forever. You're not forgotten. He smiled, knowing this was not the end, only a new beginning for both of them. When he walked back to his home, he looked up again. The same soft smile in the sky was still there. He said softly, "Maybe stories never die. They just find new hearts to live in." He kept walking, holding his book close, feeling like someone was walking beside him, not in shadow, but in memory. That night, before sleeping, Noah wrote one final line in his notebook. "Some souls are meant to meet, one to speak, and one to listen." Then he closed it gently and placed it beside Mira's diary. He turned off the light and smiled in the dark. The next morning, sunlight entered his room. The diary lay open again, showing one new line written in soft handwriting. "I am free." Noah's eyes filled with tears. He smiled and whispered, "Yes, you are." He placed his hand on the diary and said, "Goodbye, Mira. Thank you for giving me my story." Then he looked out at the bright sky. The same gentle shape of a smile was still visible far above, glowing softly. Noah laughed quietly and said, "Keep smiling, Mira. The world can see you now." The story of Mira ended that day, but in truth, it never really ended. Every person who read Noah's book carried a part of her inside, and every time someone believed in love again, somewhere in the sky, Mira's smile grew brighter.